So here's the results of this control sample. You'll see that it's positive. You have a test line positive and a control line positive, and same for the cassette as well. Control line positive and test line positive. You'll notice that the test line is not as strong as a control line, but it doesn't matter. As I said before, it is still clearly positive. This is a control sample, and it is clearly not an early morning urine, as you can see by the colour. If you were testing a sample of this colour, I would suggest it's not an early morning sample, therefore it's not the best or optimal sample to use. As we're dealing with real life samples, it's very important to dispose of these effectively. So the sample and the test device are all put into yellow bins, the sharp bins, and securely disposed of. When you come to record the batch numbers and the expiry dates, you'll find them on the edge of the boxes. This one here denotes a 25 international unit test box, and this one is the 10. You'll find all the information on there that you need. Okay, so we've discussed the levels of HCG and actually how the test works, and we've done a couple of samples. The technique is very important. When you hold the pipette, you hold it vertically, then you make sure 3 drops go in, and you read it at 3 minutes up to 10 minutes, but no longer. The shelf life of these kits is 2 years. And the storage temperature is 4 degrees up to 30 degrees. Now you can store these kits in the fridge, but you have to make sure that they're brought to room temperature before you start to use them. And it's exactly the same if you're using a sample and you get it in on a Friday. You can put it in the fridge for 2 days before testing, or you can freeze it and test it later on. When you take it out, you must ensure that the sample is warmed up to room temperature, because the flow rate is significantly different when you test a cold sample held at 4 degrees, and the 3 minutes and 10 minutes go out the window. You should really make sure that it's warmed up to room temperature. And conversely, using body temperature samples straight away, a fresh one, is absolutely fine. Yeah, as long as it's not chilled, and that will affect the flow rate. The responsibilities of testing rely with the person doing the test. So the nurse has to make sure that all the procedures are followed, and it's 3 drops, read at 3 minutes up to 10. If they come back after 10 minutes, it should be chucked away and started again. Another one should be opened up and retested. The IFU, the worksheet, according to the MHRA, must be read before people do the testing. Not every time, but just once. And in this package insert, it gives you all of the limitations, sensitivity, specificity, all of the kit information you need to understand the test. And that's part of the MHRA regulations. We talked about the quality control that's in here, the internal quality control on the test, but there are external quality controls. Talking about quality control systems that are used, there is NEQAS based out of Edinburgh, WEQAS based out of Cardiff, and a new one called QPoint that's based out of Frimley Park. These are samples sent to the laboratory and then distributed to yourselves, so that the quality of the results and the techniques can be assessed. When the testing is being done, the results are sent back to the point of care coordinator, who then sends them back to the NEQAS or WEQAS or whoever, and then they are marked and the results are sent back. So it's very important that when you receive the samples are done as quickly as possible and not let to stand until it's passed down the line to for somebody to complete. When the results are sent back, then the whole trust is marked on the results. As I said, when the results are sent back to the scheme organiser, be NEQAS or WEQAS or QPoint, then any discrepant answers will be investigated by the scheme organiser and the point of care coordinator as well. And if it's a retraining issue or a batch problem, then it will be resolved fairly quickly. And that's the reason that you should do the quality control quickly and effectively. The policy on pregnancy test is often held on the intranet, on the hospital, on the trust intranet. So if you want to, you need to read that and understand what the trust policy is on point of care testing. You may get a specific SOP for pregnancy testing, which I would advise you to read as well, so you know what the requirements are for the testing. Recording results. When you get a positive like this, you can, different trusts do it in different ways. They either write it in the patient notes, they put the results in a file, they put the results in a book, sign it, they put the pregnancy test lot number and the expiry date on there as well. So you have to make sure that there is a continuous connection right from the start, from the supplier right the way through to the patient and the result. And the MHRA are quite hot on making sure that this happens as well. The point of contact, if there are any difficulties, is a point of care coordinator in the hospital, but our details can also be found on our website. If you have any problems you want to contact us, please feel free to do so. So we've talked about the range of tests and where they're used for exclusion or for confirmation. The limitations of the test are very small, but they will detect HCG if it's present. So the lady may not be pregnant, it could have spontaneously aborted or had a proper abortion or given birth, and it would still be classed as HCG positive on these pregnancy tests. The other limitations are there are certain tumours, certain cancers that can cause raised HCG levels that you need to be aware of. And you also have to make sure that the sample that you get from the person is their own, because it's not always the case. So if they can provide a fresh sample when you're there and you can test it immediately, that's the best option. According to the MHRA, they have a pregnancy testing top tips and advice that we should all try and follow, and this training follows that to the letter. So read the instructions for use, follow health and safety. Although this sample here was not a patient's sample, one must always wear gloves and go through strict health and safety rules when you're doing the testing. The training course you have been on or followed this video, storage temperatures, as I said before, it's 4 degrees up to 30. I have had one problem once where I was asked to visit a GP surgery. They had used the kits for 3 months without any problem, and then all of a sudden had a problem. And I asked where they stored the kit, because everything had worked for a while and stopped working. The control line failed to show, which was an indication of the whole batch, the whole kit was wrong. And they had stored it on a shelf above a radiator. And it was in the middle of winter, so it was banging out over 30 degrees all the time, until eventually the kit expired. Going through this as well, storage quality control is the next one we've talked about. External quality control or internal quality control on the sample itself, always be aware of. The type of samples you should get are early morning urine. If they are that colour, it's not the best sample, as I mentioned before. A nice strong colour, strong orange colour is the best sample to use. Control line must always be present. And the read time is 3 minutes up to 10 minutes. This is just going back over what we've discussed. Faint lines or weak intensity, it's a positive. If you can read it, it's a positive. The results to be recorded somewhere that everyone has access to them. Interferences and sources of error or limitations. With ectopic pregnancies, you will get low levels of HCG produced, and they will take longer to produce. So bear all of these things in mind when you're doing the test. And of course, good record keeping. What will be handed out after the training are these certificates, and on the back of these certificates there's a checklist, and that checklist has covered everything that we've covered today. So if the person can then download it, or if it's sent to them, tick off all of the points we've covered and sign the bottom. That means that this certificate, when filled in with their name, is theirs. That's the training they've followed, and everything is tied together quite nicely. These worksheets can also be handed out, and these are hung in the sluice room or somewhere convenient when the testing is done, and these are just an easy to follow guide for doing the test. If you want trainers, then I can come along and train them and do the competency assessments of trainers. So they're responsible for ongoing training locally in your ward or department. On the website there are questions and answers, frequently asked questions. If you have any other further questions, please contact us either through your point of care coordinator or directly, and we'll be happy to answer them. When you've watched this video, you can download the questions from the website, answer them and send them back to the point of care coordinator, who will then issue you with one of these beautiful certificates. And on the back you have a checklist. If you just check off all the points that you understood, countersign, and then that will remain for your portfolio. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen today. I hope it's been very helpful. All of the package inserts and other training aids are downloadable from our website www.invitech.co.uk. Thank you for listening.